Howdy. So today we're joined by the contributors to the chapter about building effective partnerships for school-based research. Reesha, do you mind introducing yourself first?
Sure, I'm Reesha Adamson, and I'm an associate professor at Missouri State University. This will actually be my 8th year there. Before that, I was a teacher for students with emotional and behavior disorders. I was also a district behavior consultant, and I worked some at juvenile justice centers as their primary educator. Um, Ultimately, my research revolves around how do we translate good evidence-based practices into schools? How do we get those in teachers' hands, make them really usable, and get teachers using these practices without the help of researchers?
Awesome. Jessica, do you mind going next?
Sure, I'm Jessica Nelson. I'm also at Missouri State University with Reesha, and I am a BCBA board certified behavior analyst. And before that, I was a resource room teacher, actually with Felicity, who you'll meet next. So we kind of know the ins and outs of some of the things teachers need that are in the classroom right now. Research interests are similar to Reesha, evidence-based practices for teachers. I also am very, very interested in working hard on para-educators as well and training our para-educators to help out classroom teachers.
Awesome. And then Felicity?
Hi, I'm Felicity Post. I am an assistant professor at Peru State College in rural Nebraska. I have been here for 5 years, and before that, as Jessica mentioned, she and I taught together in a resource setting, I think for 7 years, and I was in the setting for 4 years prior to that, so about 11 years in the classroom. Some of my research interests too, very much the evidence-based practice, that bridging that gap from, research to the classroom. Para supports is something that the three of us have been working pretty hard on as well. And just the use of aversive practices in school settings and supports for students with emotional and behavioral disorders. So
Thank y'all. That's great. So we'll dive right in. Why did you become a researcher? And anyone can start with this one.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So this is Jessica again. Basically, being a teacher myself, I was just really curious about, you hear all these things and you're told to read all these journals and you're like, hold on, I don't have time for that, right? So as a classroom teacher, I didn't have time. So I always wanted to become a researcher and figure out how we could make it easier for teachers to implement without those researchers in the classroom. I think it's just wildly important. And I wanted to take those evidence-based interventions and make sure they got into the hands of teachers, and we taught them how to do it, because we all know time is a huge deal to all of our teachers right now. And so how can we make it easier on teachers to get these practices in their hands and have great interventions with students in the classroom?
And I guess mine's similar, but I also really loved the science behind why things worked and wanted to know kind of those basic key elements of how do you put these things together and turn it into something that's going to be effective for kids. And also along those same lines, when I was in the classroom, it was why does something work and something doesn't? And what's the science behind it? And where does it come from? And what does it mean if it's not a good match to the kid, or if we are not doing this with fidelity? And really the science behind those pieces were what was a huge interest to me.
I think these ladies read my notes, because that's pretty much where I stand. And you'll understand why we're research partners, because we very much approach and think the same way. But I knew that I was going to be standing in front of educators. And I remember being in the classroom working with students who were very challenging and wanting someone to be able to tell me, this is what research says is best, and this is how you do it. And so I think something that the three of us really strive to do is taking our research and what we've learned and putting it into the hands of future teachers to say, hey, yeah, this might be in a professional journal and it may have all that professional garb surrounding it, but this is what it looks like in practice. And this is how you can implement these strategies that have been proven to be effective with kids. And, like Reesha said too, just that mystery of why does this work and this not work, and just doing some investigating to really be able to bring that to our teacher candidates is what I love. So
we actually didn't plan this question, but as y'all were talking, it's like popped up in my mind. If you put yourself back into your roles as a teacher, and y'all do a lot of work with teachers, how do you make research seem less daunting? Or because I know it's so scary. Oh, here's a research article and it's immersive, right? So how do you help bridge that gap where you make it not seem so scary?
Right. I think one of the things, oh, go ahead, Reesha.
No, you can start. You're good. Okay. You were on it.
No, but I think one of the big things is to take some of that technical piece out of it. Like, here's the words we use in the classroom. We all know them. We all understand them. And I think it's also having those conversations with teachers like, hey, we get you're under a time constraint. Even COVID world right now, that has been even more difficult. So having that conversation with teachers and having that buy-in from them, like, hey, we know what you're doing. We know how many hours you put in. We know you don't just put those hours in the classroom. You're at home, you're up till midnight. And so I think it's super important for us to just take that technical piece out of it and show them and model for them, instead of saying, here's an article, go read it. They're not going to ever read it. We need to model and show them what it looks like.
I think
oh, go ahead, Reesha.
I think it's important also to lay it out for teachers, really, that we're trying to do something that's going to be more efficient for you. So it may be something that looks like you're putting more time in up front, but actually it's going to pay off in the long run. You're going to see student growth quicker. You're going to be able to track it more efficiently. You're going to be able to put something out there that's going to really give you the gains that you've been wanting to see in these students, and just let us be partners with you. And I think that partnership piece is really crucial. And that's kind of all of our research philosophy, is that when we go into a school, even if we are trying to get teachers to do this by themselves, they are not alone. We are there to be their partners, even if we can't help assist them with the actual process, but we're there to listen. We're there to hear about their frustrations. We're also there to know them personally, know what's important to them, know what's important to their students, their classroom, their administrators, and really get a feel for the culture of that school, the classroom, and really to be there as their partners in this process.
And I think we're in a really powerful position as professors in the classroom, because we see teachers before they step foot into actual classrooms working with students. And so I know that we go through the process of kind of demystifying research and saying, here are the parts of the research article that we really need to pay attention to, and what do these things mean, and how does that look in practice? And by being able to have those conversations with students and letting them know that just because a teacher uses this practice, especially one who's been in, teaching for a long period of time, doesn't make it valid, doesn't make it the best practice, and that you really need to not take everything at face value and question it, which is what researchers do. And so looking to see, like, what surrounds my decision to do this, and being purposeful, and helping teachers realize that, research kind of provides that purposeful, decision making that's so important in our classrooms.
Yeah, there was a professor at Texas A&M named Emily Cantrell who works in the reading program, and she would always harp on being a critical consumer as a teacher, which I just love when we think about Pinterest and teachers pay teachers and all of those things. All right, so what are some of the biggest challenges you face in conducting research in applied settings?
Sure. Okay, I'll just keep going first. It's fine. Okay. So, I have a short and simple answer here. And Reesha kind of touched on it with that last question, truly. Like, I think the biggest thing that we as researchers, I need that teacher buy-in. And so I want to make sure that I'm forming those relationships. There's been researchers that run into a school, they run a study, and they run out. And so there's been a lot of teachers that are like, you know what, we don't want to do any more research because here's what's happened to us. And the three of us strive really hard not to do that. Like, we form partnerships with our schools. We want to know the ins and outs of their climate and their culture. And so making sure we have teacher buy-in is our number one concern before we move on from that. Because if we don't have that buy-in, we're really not going to be able to help them with any of those interventions and get that trust that we need to be able to run interventions in their school building.
I think one of the hardest challenges we have is just the population of students that we all like to work with. We know that they're a transient group of students. We also know that they're more likely to face disciplinary issues. And all of those factors when it comes to running a high quality research study aren't great. And so we've run into those numerous times, and I think those are the biggest challenge. But I think as a field, we know that. And so as long as we can do everything we can to document those pieces, to reflect on them, to talk about, how this could have been different or what could have changed in this whole process, I think that no matter what you put out there, the research community is really respectful of that. But that's probably one of the largest challenges. And I think teacher frustration goes right along with that, because you can get the teacher buy-in and they love it, and then a kid moves away. And then it's like, well, what now? And I think that's where that relationship piece comes back kind of full circle, as we say, it didn't work out this time. That doesn't mean when you have another kid that this is appropriate for, that I won't be right there with you to walk this journey. Like, I'm there to support you even outside of this research project. You let me know and we'll be there. And I think that's really critical for longevity, but it's also one of those biggest challenges too.
And I think the three of us are really careful about what it is that we study. We look into things that we've all done before and used. And so we can speak that common language with the teachers, just like these ladies said, like having that relatability and conversation with the teachers to let them know that this is meaningful work. We're not just coming in because we want another publication or something along those lines, that this is, we're really looking on how can we get this information into the hands of the practitioners to support them, you know, in implementing change that's going to be meaningful and effective for not only their students, but for them to make their jobs easier and more effective in the classroom. But I think we would be, I think it would be funny to not mention the whole, you know, life-work balance also is really tough. Like, in addition to being researchers, we all have families, we all have, you know, our teaching responsibilities as well. So finding that balance is really hard at times, and just the accessibility of classrooms and being where we need to be is tough. And so we've made an effort to really work together on a regular basis to meet and talk and, you know, review our projects. And so that way we can stay on top of things, so we have meaningful movement like through everything that we do. So
Awesome. And actually, a lot of what you talked about funnels into this last question. What advice would you give to people beginning research?
Okay, Jessica,
Me?
I'm taking this from you.
Me? You want me to go?
I think the first key that I tell all of my students and anybody that I work with is I'm here to listen first. So before I jump into and tell you my priorities or my initiatives or what I'm after, you may know my little synopsis about what I'm there to investigate, but really I'm there to listen. I want to hear what are the challenges that you are facing? What are the questions that you want answered around this? And I'm here to listen. And I think walking in with those open ears and hearing what they have to say helps you as a researcher, because it's going to let you be able to put everything within a context that they understand and immediately makes it valuable to them. And so I think that is like the first key, the number one that I would always tell anybody that's trying to approach research.
Mm-hmm.
okay, Jess, I'm going to make you go last this time.
That's fine.
So the number one thing I think for me that I've learned a lot about going through this process is being open to constructive feedback and critical feedback, because I mean, research is pretty rigorous and it can be really tough and disheartening to put so much time and effort into something and then have it, you know, get rejected, or have all this feedback come back to you and almost feeling defeated, like, oh my gosh, I thought this was so great. We've put in so much time into this, and what are we missing? And so just really keeping an open mind and realizing that these editors and the people giving you this feedback are helping to grow you as a researcher. And so truly paying attention to the feedback, making those meaningful changes, and realizing this is a process, that, you know, just because you research this doesn't mean you don't have room to grow. And so I think just that being open, working together, collaborating, and making sure you realize that don't just accept no at face value. It's like, okay, so what do we need to do to get better? And like, how can we fix this? And how can we keep moving? So you constantly have to have that personal pep talk, you know, in your own brain and amongst each other.
Along the same lines, though, our teachers are also giving us that feedback too. So when you ask a question the first time, you don't expect it to be perfect. And so you're going to do multiple iterations of a project, and you're going to refine interventions, and you're going to make them better and better. And so listening to that feedback from your teachers, from your administrators, from your students at times is really critical, so that you know how you can advance it.
Yeah. So I'll just add to that. I think a really important thing for me was find your people to research with. So I have these lovely ladies here. There's another group that I write with consistently. And so we all kind of have our people that we write with and encourage each other. And I think that's so important, because if you try to do it on your own, it can be really difficult. I mean, we came from the classroom. We love to be around people and love to talk to people and love to collaborate with people. And research can be the same way. You just have to find your people. So I had a really great mentor, several great mentors actually. And so one thing I try to do is make sure that, like, even if it's for 30 minutes, like I sit down and I try to write every day, 30 minutes, right? Just like get some words out on the paper, because the longer that you push off your writing from your task list, the less you get out. And so I think that's a really important thing, is to try to give yourself some blocked time in your day to make sure you get done what you need to get done. And then I would say the last thing is, at the university level, they offer so many writing workshops, so many writing retreats, those types of things. Take advantage of all the things that either your district or your university or whoever offers to you, because a lot of times those things are free. And so they're just a great way to get started, and they're a great way to meet people. So maybe that's where you meet your team of people.
Well, thank you all. This has been wonderful. And thank you so much for contributing to the book. The chapter you all wrote is awesome on how to develop partnerships effectively.
Thanks for the invite. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was
thank
Thank
fun.
you.
you. Thank you so much.